Welcome back. Now we will attempt to talk about the first teaching Buddha gave on this earth, the first sutra that he taught. Dharmachakra Parivartana Sutra, turning the wheel of Dharma, Sutra of turning the wheel of Dharma. As you remember, it's the 11th great activity of Shakyamuni Buddha on this earth, is that he turned the wheel of Dharma. And we also discussed a little bit that he turned the wheel of Dharma according to 3 different listeners. For the Sravakas, those who wish to become Arhat, and for the Pratyeka Buddhas, those who are on the path to become Pratyeka Buddha, and for the Bodhisattvas, those who wish to become Buddha. Of course, this doesn't mean that the teachings of the Buddha does not have any mundane benefit, that is given. For sure it has. Just remembering the Buddha, remembering the Dharma, remembering the Sangha like a Bodhisattva has immense benefit. As Buddha says in a sutra, if someone would look at the face of a Bodhisattva with joy, and just like that, with so much joy and appreciation that that's a Bodhisattva, even for a moment, Buddha said the merit will be far greater than if someone would cure the eye sickness of the whole world. If, let's say, the whole world there is an epidemic and they are all blind now, and then there is a doctor who goes around and cures the eye problem of all human beings. So this type of merit is immense, right? Even more so is the merit of just looking at the face of a Bodhisattva and rejoicing. So these so in these ways, obviously there are a lot of mundane gains too in this life and in the next life. So it's not like the Buddha's teachings are influential or beneficial only for liberation. That's really not the case either. But that's the main aim. That's the intention of the speaker. The main intention of the speaker. Why he give this teaching? So. So then again, please, we will try to generate our motivation that for the sake of the liberation of all sentient beings, the speaker and the listener will go through this Mahasutra with utmost devotion, without any anger, without any desire, without any arrogance, and as little ignorance as possible. In fact, we will take this sutra as an antidote to our ignorance, to our desire, to our arrogance, to our miserliness, to our anger, and so on and so forth. As announced, I hope you all have the translation of Dharmachakra Parivartana Sutra. Since this sutra is common among all schools of Buddha Dharma, you may get a translation from a Pali source, from the Theravada masters, or you may get a translation from a Sanskrit source, like the Tibetans have, and the translation from the Tibetan. You can also directly get the English translation from 84,000. 84,000. I think they translated it as the Sutra of the Wheel of Dharma. It's not Dharmachakra Parivartana Sutra, it's Dharmachakra Sutra. I made a mistake. So it's not turning the sutra of turning the wheel of Dharma, it's the sutra of just wheel of Dharma. Anyway, because it's two different sutras. I made a mistake while I was looking through it. So the name is Dharmachakra Sutra. The Sutra of Wheel of Dharma. To explain what is Dharmachakra, and I would like to go into the history of this sutra a little bit, because this sutra has a direct link to a lot of historical events in Buddha Dhamma. This sutra, by teaching this sutra, Buddha Dharma Sangha was completed on this earth. By teaching this sutra was the first ever teaching given by the Buddha, like official teaching. And by teaching this sutra, the Dharmachakra was first, the wheel of Dharma was first turned. And when the Buddha passed away and the Arhats gathered the sutras, this is the first sutra that they gathered, You're not supposed to go up, you stay here. People like me, earlier teachers, they don't need any gadgets, any text, they just teach from their experience, from their memory, but really it's a very sad, degenerate time that, I want to talk about a sutra that has just few pages and I need so many different things. Anyway, so the history of the sutra, in a way, is Buddha, the Prince Siddhartha is practicing extreme asceticism near the river Naranjana, barely eating anything, barely drinking anything. And as he does so for many years, he realizes that he has really gone beyond, as far as physical torment, self sort of flagellation, in a way, is concerned. There has never been a practitioner, a meditator who has punished their own body like this, and there will never be, and there never is on this earth, and yet he is nowhere closer to the liberation. He is nowhere closer to the cessation of anger, attachment, ignorance, and so he decides to change his method, and it is said that he realized that this is also not the way, that you really punish your body to an extent that you cannot even stand up, you can hardly speak, So in this condition, Siddhartha tries to go to, it is said that he tries to go to a nearby village, and he falls on the way. That's one version. Another version is he's thinking like that, and then whichever version you follow. But the thing is that in the village there is a girl named Sujata, and her mother sends her to make offering to a forest god. Somewhere there's a statue, probably, and she goes with the sweet sort of milk soaked in a rice. Anyway, and so as she was on the way, she meets this ascet, this hermit, completely weak and barely able to move and at the brink of life and death. And she feels sort of sorry for him, and then she offers the food to him, and Siddhartha takes the food. And it is said that food gives him that was the beginning of him starting to take normal food. And around that time, there were 5 other ascets who used to follow Siddhartha, because they had followed so many other masters. And when they were receiving teachings from one master, Siddhartha came and started receiving teachings from the same master. And Siddhartha, what took this master years to understand, the type of meditative concentration to reach, Siddhartha managed it within a month, like very short time, like few months. And when this master tells Siddhartha, "Oh, now you should stay with me and teach," but then Siddhartha realizes that this is not the cure. This is not the cure to ignorance. This is not the cure to samsara. This will just give me a higher rebirth, in a formless God realm. But that's it. So Siddhartha leaves. As Siddhartha leaves, 5 of this master's students also leave with Siddhartha, and they starts following Siddhartha, and acting like his follower, his retinue, because they were convinced that Siddhartha is sort of very honest and someone who cannot be compromised, so to speak, that his pursuit was unconditional. Yet when they saw Siddhartha change his path and start eating normal food, they immediately abandoned Siddhartha, saying, "Oh, now Siddhartha has left his austerity. Siddhartha is now living very lavishly, indulging in the joys of some mundane world." So they leave him. So they left and they started meditating near Varanasi. If Siddhartha was meditating near Naranjana, and then he meditates in Bodh Gaya, and Varanasi is just few 100 kilometers away, just maybe like 200 kilometers, I don't know, very near. It's not far at all. So Siddhartha goes to Bodh Gaya, as we discussed before, sits under the Bodhi tree, attains enlightenment. When he decides that now it's the time to teach, he tries to look at this world to see who is the vessel for his teaching, who will understand my teaching, because this is what he found, or so to speak, what he has to say, what he has to teach is something that no one has heard during his time. So it's so unique, and he has to be very, of course, then you have to be, you have to give it to the right person, as a beginning, as an inauguration. And not only that, his teaching can only be held and understood through practice, through realization. So that's also there. It's not that he can just go to a bunch of scholars and start discussing, his philosophies, and then that's it. It's not at all like that. So Siddhartha sees through his Gautama Buddha sees through his clairvoyance that actually his old teachers, those who taught him meditation, would be perfect vessel for his teaching, but they have already passed away now, they're dead. So now he says, now who else is perfect vessel for his teaching? Then he finds, those 5 ascets, hermits, meditators, they are perfect vessel for my teaching. And so he goes to find them. And he finds them in Varanasi, and then we have this beautiful account of this alone gives us sort of idea of how his physical aura or demeanor must have been, that when the 5 ascets were meditating in Varanasi, they see Siddhartha coming towards them, and immediately they talk among themselves, look, one who left his practice, one who indulged in a mundane, so on, so on, Siddhartha is coming. We shall shun him. No one shall talk to him. We will not, we will completely ignore him, so let's do that. And they decide that, and they all sat or stood, or however they practice, those 5. But as Siddhartha drew closer and closer, they just couldn't resist his parents. That the way he appeared was so out of this world, so to speak, that somebody immediately stood up and started cleaning the place and preparing a seat for the Siddhartha, for the Buddha. Someone ran and invited, like, please come, invited. Others stood up and prepared, cleaned themselves, and like this. Started talking to him, Siddhartha, my friend, what happened to you? You look very different. And then there Siddhartha says, do not call the Buddha my friend, like this. So, I think it's either my friend or son of noble family or something like that. And he says, do not call the Buddha such things, So I am the Buddha. I am completely awakened now. I guess that you would think, but that sounds like Buddha is announcing he's Buddha. But I guess that's the only way, that's the only way how you, when you are the only one who is awakened, and the only way you let others know you are the only one awakened, you are awakened, and you can show them how to awake, how to be awakened. First you have to tell them. So this is what he did. Then so that's how it starts, and then he starts teaching them the sort of his Dharma. And the first teaching he gave is this sutra. So if you go to Varanasi, there is a place, there is a great stupa built in the memory of Buddha giving the teaching, his first sermon, or his first sort of turning the wheel of Dharma, built by Ashoka in that place. And right near that place is a beautiful Theravada temple, and there is a Bodhi tree, and also there is these beautiful statues of Buddha sitting in the middle and surrounded by the 5 monks, around nearby you will find this sutra in all different types of languages like Pali, Sanskrit, like, I don't know, Tibetan, English, Chinese, Vietnamese, like, Laos, Cambodia, I don't know what languages, so many. So this gives you the idea of the importance of this sutra too. First came the Buddha on this earth. Shakyamuni Buddha became awakened under the Bodhi tree. Then the Buddha gives this teaching. He turns the wheel of Dharma and he gives this sutra. He teaches this sutra. So now we have Dharma, right? So we have three objects of refuge. So we have Buddha. First we have Buddha. Then the Buddha gives teaching. We have the Dharma. Then the third one is while Buddha is giving this teaching, especially this sutra, while he's giving this teaching, the 5 listeners experience, very strong transformation of themselves, of their mind, basically. And one of them becomes completely liberated from samsara. And he's known as Kondinya. We Tibetans, we don't know how to say Sanskrit properly, so we call him Kunshi Kondinya, but it's Kondanya, I think, Kondanya, correct me if I'm wrong. And he became Arhat. So now we have Sangha. First of all, we have 5 monks, that's also Sangha. But monks are not the real Sangha, right? The real Sangha is those who have the realization, following the Buddha. So he became the first Arhat, now we have a Sangha. So with this sutra, this earth became rich once more with Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So also historically, it's very important for us, sort of a follower of Buddha, because this is everything that is about us starts with Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and it should end with Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and whatever that is in the middle is Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. There's no escaping these 3 objects of refuge, and that's how we have. That's how it came to be, so to speak. So that's that. So the name of this sutra, Dharmachakra Sutra. Now, wheel of Dharma. Why is it called wheel of Dharma? Is wheel, the function of wheel is to take things from one place to another, or to go from one place to another. When the wheel moves, it goes from one place to another, right? So that's the function of the wheel. Similarly, as Buddha was giving this teaching, so when the Buddha says, when the Buddha meets the 5 ascets and says, yes, I become Buddha, so they says, then please teach us the way, since you have found the way. And he says, yes, okay, I will teach you. Till then we only have Buddha. Then when the Buddha starts giving this teaching, it looked, as though, for the celestial gods and goddesses, it says that at that time, visibly maybe only few human beings were present, but invisibly there were countless of gods and goddesses, and definitely, especially, the students of the previous life of the Buddha as a god of as a bodhisattva in the realm of Tushita heaven, right, where he tells them to come to me when I start giving teaching. So all of them were there. So it was a huge gathering, huge gathering, and they were watching. So what they saw was that first there was only one person who understood this teaching, which is Shakyamuni. As he was teaching, it seemed, as he was teaching, the mind of the listener, especially omniscient Kondanya, he was called omniscient for a reason, Kondanya changes, and it becomes completely free and purified, just like the mind of the Buddha. Of course, these gods and goddesses cannot see the mind of the Buddha, but it seemed like that the realization of the Buddha sort of went into the mind stream of the listener, So Buddha is without any afflictions. Yeah, Buddha has this realization of emptiness, and as he teach, it looked like, his qualities of not having any afflictions and his realization of emptiness sort of rolled over into the listener. So that when Buddha starts teaching, then the gods and goddesses starts rejoicing. The great Shakyamuni has now turned the wheel of Dharma. That is why this sutra is called Wheel of Dharma, because after teaching and after witnessing all that, the gods and goddesses, they rejoice, and there's this whole account. In this sutra, actually, there's a whole account of how sort of gods from lower realms tell it to the higher realms, then gods of the higher realms again tell it to more higher realms, like this, saying, now Shakyamuni Buddha, there is Buddha on this earth, and he's now finally turned the wheel of Dharma, like this, So because of how they were mentioning it, the sutra got this name. That's the name. And Dharmachakra Sutra do. I think I should read it once, as traditionally we have this tradition of giving oral transmission. Now, whether you receive oral transmission through such devices, use of such devices or not, I don't know. But I'm sure there are benefits, and there is a stream of blessing. There is no doubt. So I will read. Jagar ke Dharmachakra Sutra Refuge do Chuchukulu do Tamchimbala Chazal, the Getavision Jumnende Varanase, Changsoma Verdaganana Shude, Tenejum Deji. Ngade gelonam la kaza wa gelonda ngangon motivation nam la din dungal pabe demba she suji ni le chaba mi je so chaba rigba do to ba je so gelonda ngangon motivation nam la din dungal kun jungwa din dungal goba din dungal gog do be lam she suji le chaba mi je so chaba rigba do to ba je so gelonda ngangon motivation nam la dungal pabe demba te nge ngombara shebe yongso shebara shao she sulchi di la chaba na chaba na mi je so chaba rigba do to ba je so gelonda ngangon motivation nam la dungal kun jungwa pabe demba te nge ngombara shebe pangora chao she suji di la chaba na Mikesa Sheba Ribodo Tobaches, Gelonda, Hangum, Matuchunam, Dungal Gokpa Sheba, Papetembating, Gombaraship, Mosum to Chow, Suji Dila Chepa, Na, Mikes, Sheba Ribodo Tobaches, Gelonda, Hangum, Matuchunam, Dungal Gokpa, Dovelam, Papetembating, Gombaraship, Gombarashaw, Suji Chapana, Mikes Sheba, Ribodo Tobaches, Gelonda, Hangum, Matuchunam, Dungal Papetembating, Gombaraship, Yonso Shes, Suji Dila Chapana, Mikes Sheba Ribodo Tobaches, Gelonda, Hangum, Matuchunam, Dungal Kunjum, Papetembating, Gombaraship. Pangso ji sudi le chapana mi je se sheba de lo to ba je so gelonda madu be chonamla dungal gokba abe demba te nge ngombara shebe ngosum de chesu sudi le chapana mi je sheba de lo to ba je so gelonda madu be chonamla dungal gokbara do lam pabe demba te nge ngombara shebe gomso ji sudi shin hila chapana mi je sheba de lo to ba je so gelonda nga chi sidu Pabe Dambashiba Dinamla, Theatre Lensum do De Number Junisu Corva, Mig Majesheba, my Riba, my Lo, my Toba, Majepa, Tesido, Nala, the Chibi, do the Chibi, do the Samba, Che, Gejon, the Tamzere Chepe, Chegu, the Lada Mirja, Badilla, Trova, and Gabrajuma, the Medemba, the drop, the Trova, the Chinchilo, the drop, same Mount, never my Georgi, Gelonda, Gela, and Manda, which is the Sang, Gezo, Shower, Majesto, Gelonda, Kane, Pabe Dambashiba Dinamla, Theatre Lensum do De Number Junisu Corva, Mig Shepa. rikpa to lo to tokpa che ba tenne nga la ta che be jiten du da che ge jong da tramzere che be che gu la da mir che be le la da mir che ba dille tholo ba ta Yabara Jonga the Midamatar of the Drova, Jinji Loda, Drave, Semji, Mount Nebara, Joroji, Gelonta, Nete, Tenamata was of Sange, so she Chavra, Shushinam Don, the Katsalna, Katsalbana, Saturday, Condon Yata, Laji, teaching Laji, Chonam, Migdul, Major, Timata, Drava, Cheso, Tenechum Dindi, Saturday, Condon Yala Katsalba, Condon Chuchi, Chukun Shesam. Chomden de kun sala so gondon ya chu kun shesam de varcha kun sala so kun sala so set de gondon ya chu kun shebe thi set de gondon ya kun she gondon ya she sigla da so ta so set de gondon ya chu kun she so she sai sale nu jin nam da to para che de thobo de chomden de warana ser thangso ma be da ke na so len sum de de number ju chu kolo chot de ba gen jongam tham se am lam du dam sangpa ham su jan jigden du timbara ma korwa Keo Mongol Pemba, Keo Mongol, the Wada, Jigden Laning, Zawada, the Minam, Jitun, the Pemba, David, Sirkorwe, Lai, Ring, Ombara, Persian, Lama, Injury, Yonzo, Yamsuji, Young Draxo, Sale, Nujin, Namji, Dratene, Namkala, Juve, Nujin, the Jajin, Shibe, Rida, Sumsasum, Bilanam, the Top Drum, the Gadi, the Trugana, Wanjakilanam. Kejik Teda use them Tena Kejik Tanji the use them tell us some basic then Japarto Tazo, Sanri Jelanam Jija, Datopara, Chopoda Chumden de Jivarana Sir, Tangsoma Verdagi, Naso Lensum do de number Juni, Jishu Kolo Chata, the Bagenjongam, Tamzam, Lam, Dutam, Sambam, Sudan Jiden. Cheda Tumbara, Gaya, Makorwa, Kevombo, Pemba, Deva, Jigdan, and Zavadan, the Minam Jitun, the Pemba, David, Chirkorwe, and Lai Ring Ombara Page, Lama Injury, Honso, Yamsuji, Young Draws, Chumden Deji, Varana Siransoma Verdagi, Naxo, Lensum do de number Junis, Chuju Kolo, Choda Demba, Korwe, Teaser, Chujinam down, Dilla Chuju Kolo, Korwashi, Sila Daso, Taso, Chuju Kolo, Korwa, those Tarpa, Loze, Jurubata. Doing. Okay, thank you very much. So that's it. Touch the leg. I'm just joking. That would be funny. So then we have then the sutra begins with Dike Thage Töpa Tuching Nas, thus have I heard at one time. Thus have I heard at one time. So this is a very important, I'd like to talk a little bit about this, and there is also a historic account about this too, connected to this sutra, and where do I start? When Buddha was alive, I think Ananda asked him, when Buddha decides to pass away now, Ananda asks him, what do we do? What do we do now? If you go, who will be our teacher? Who will be our, abbot, so to speak? Who will, what will happen to the Dharma? Who will, like this, who, he starts asking a lot of questions. He's worried. And then Buddha says, this will be your teacher, like Vinaya is your teacher, so to speak, and when it comes to the teaching, he says, in future time, for the benefit of future beings, I want you to collect all the teachings that I have given in my life, into three sort of groups, baskets, So Vinaya, Sutra, and Abhidharma. And the sutra teachings, the responsibility I give to you, it is upon you to hold all of my sutra teaching. He says this to Ananda. Now, Ananda was not only, it's not an important factor, but he was a cousin of Buddha. Not only that, he was a student of Buddha, and he became a personal attendant of Buddha for during the later part of Buddha's life for many years. And Ananda was there almost throughout Buddha's enlightened sort of lifespan, after he became enlightened, and Ananda was one of the early students, and anyway, so Ananda had everything memorized, especially all the sutra memorized. He was not an arhat, but he was on the path. He was also, and he had this capacity to memorize everything. We call it mijebe zung. It is actually through meditative experience that one gains this ability to have photogenic memory, so to speak, that you never forget anything. So Ananda has this. And then Buddha says, and then in the future time, when you, he tells everybody, when you start collecting my teachings, then at the beginning, I want you to put, thus have I heard at one time, evam maya strotam, yeah, like indicative teaching now. Thus have I heard at one time, at the beginning, at the end, when the Buddha taught this, all the devas and humans and non-humans, everybody rejoiced. Put it at the end, and the beginning. I want you to put this. Thus have I heard at one time. So, the sort of history behind this phrase is that, particularly to this sutra, let me see if we have time. Okay, Buddha passes away. Before Buddha passes away, one of his main sort of monk, sort of student, one of his best students, so to speak, a very influential arhat, Mangalyanaputra, he passes away. When he passes away, thousands of his students, who were all liberated beings, decides to pass together. So they, how many? Yeah. When it is said that 70,000 monks, or nuns probably, who were followers of Moggallanaputra, decides to die. They are all liberated beings. They see no reason to live longer. When that, okay. Now this again becomes a longer story. So Mangalyanaputra gets beaten by some people, and he's about to die. And his sort of best friend since childhood, they have been together, Shariputra, so another great student of Buddha. He sees that and he says, I don't want to see the death of my friend, So he passes away. He is also a liberated being. He passes away. When he passes away, 80,000 monks also sort of die together with him. It's not like suicide, just like they have exhausted all causes to be in samsara, so they can just go in a way any time they want, even though there's nowhere to go. So he dies, and with him all of his students, 80,000 people passes away. Moggallanaputra dies, 80,000 people, 70,000 student passes away. Then Buddha passes away. Buddha passes away. Then again, like 80,000 getong, like so many thousands of monks and nuns who were liberated passes away, because the only reason they were alive, they're all liberated, not bound by samsara. The only reason they were there was because Buddha was there. And the moment Buddha passes away, they have no reason to live any longer, so they pass away too. During this time, it is said that the holder, before passing away, Buddha gives his Dharma, he makes Kashyapa as holder of his dharma, says you will be the holder of dharma and you will give to this this person before you pass away, like this. So Kashyapa hears the gods, sort of celestial beings, being very sad and crying and wailing, saying, oh, Sariputra died, and then so many monks and great masters died. Moggallaniputra died, and so many great practitioners died. Then Buddha died. The sun of this world passed away. And then so many great practitioners also pass away together with that. Now the Dharma of the Buddha is just mere reflection. It is so sad. So now who will teach? And then they start crying and sort of lamenting. Who will teach Sutra now? Who will teach Abhidharma now? Who will teach Vinaya now? Like this. So when Arya Kashyapa hears this, and then he understands now is the time to collect all the teachings of the Buddha, while so many sort of direct students of the Buddha were still alive, and especially hundreds of liberated sort of students of Buddha were still alive. So he decides to gather all the teachings of the Buddha, and he wants to gather 500 arhats, 500 liberated beings. So he gathers, and they start counting, and they find that one is missing. They have only 499 arhats gathered. I want that to sink into your mind. 499 liberated beings were gathered at one point in a place. Anyway, so then the disciplinarian, so to speak, he talks to Kashyapa, who's now the regent of Buddha, saying we are one incomplete, and he says, who is it? Then he says, oh, it's Palangda. Wait, what is his name? Yeah, Palangda. Palangda, I don't know his Sanskrit name, I apologize, and I hope you find it somewhere. Palangda, so Palangda was this Arhat who was a great practitioner, but his face was, it was not like human, he was a human, but his face resembled the face of a cow. It is said that in many lives ago, he looked at his teacher, or he looked at a liberated being and said, his face is like a cow. So it's supposed to be the fruition of that karma, that in this life, at the end, the final life, he was born like this, and it was supposed to be so disturbingly hideous that when people will come to receive teachings from Buddha, they will get afraid of him, and they and so much that Buddha tells him, okay, people are getting scared of you, you go, and I want you to go and meditate somewhere, practice somewhere else. And he sends him to a heavenly realm, and that's where Palangda remains. And he was completely unaware of the fact that Buddha had passed away. So he was there. So then this monk goes to this celestial realm, heavenly realm, to meet Palangda, and he meets Palangda, and it's this as soon as the monk comes and he says, Palangda, we need you to gather all the teachings of the Buddha. Kashyapa sent me here. As soon as he heard this, he says, have the Buddha passed away? What happened? He immediately, and then he tells what happens. First, Moggallana passed away. With him, thousands of great monks passed away. Then Sariputra. Then thousands of great monks passed away. Then Buddha, together with Buddha, many more great practitioners and arhats passed away. So now we are in danger, and we need 500 arhats who have received teachings directly from Buddha to gather as witness and as to contribute whatever they have learned from Buddha, and so that we can gather it together. Balangda, when he hears that Buddha is no longer alive, and he says, I don't want to see a world where there is no Buddha, and I apologize, please apologize for my sake to the Sangha that I no longer wish to be alive now, and take my belongings, like my Dharma robe and my begging bowl, and offer it to Mahakasyapa and say that, I apologize like this. And he passes away right on the spot. So the normal monk has that, he just couldn't do anything, so he takes his belonging and goes to and offers to Kashyapa and tells the story. Now Ananda was there when the hundreds of arhats were gathered. Ananda was the one who was responsible. What was he doing? Anyway, we have to talk about the sutra, actually, not just stories. Anyway, Ananda was there and he was serving the arhats, and Kashyapa sees Ananda, the only ordinary person there, and he sees that Ananda has sort of the karma to become arhat in this life, and but for that he has to punish him. He has to make him sad and sort of make him depressed, So then the other monks says, okay, now we have no choice but to add Ananda to our gathering, since even though he's an ordinary being, but he has heard almost all the teachings of the Buddha, and Buddha gave all the sutra teachings, responsibility of his sutra teachings to Ananda too, which is also auspicious, so we use Ananda. Where Kashyapa says, no, Ananda doesn't belong here, so he must go away. And not only that, Ananda must go away completely from the Sangha, because, and Kashyapa gives 8 reasons where Ananda had failed Buddha, and one reason is because Ananda Ananda kind of forced and really urged Buddha to let women be ordained. Of course, Kashyapa not necessarily mean it like that, but that was his ruse, to make Ananda sad and kick him out, so that he will become enlightened. And one reason is that, so many, I forgot, one reason is that when once there was this dispute between an ordinary monk, a very mischievous monk, and Sariputra, who's a great monk, and Sariputra was saying something, and this mischievous monk just tried to mess with him, says, and then there starts a debate, and Buddha doesn't decide anything. He says, well, Ananda is someone who is most learned here, so Ananda, why don't you say something? And Ananda, rather than do as the Buddha says, he gives a different answer, so that also, so Kashyapa says, that time you failed Buddha again. And then like this, once you were preparing Buddha's Dharma rope, you were sewing the rope came under your feet, so that time, you failed Buddha. Once Buddha was thirsty, and Buddha said, Ananda, I want some water. So you went to get water and you gave him muddy water, So to all this allegation, Ananda gives a reason. Ananda says, yes, but at that time it was like this and this, Especially when when the Mara tells Buddha, okay, Gautama, you become enlightened, you liberated many people, you taught a lot of Dharma, now don't you think it's time to die, So Mara requests Buddha to die, and Buddha looks at Ananda and says, Ananda, a completely enlightened being like me who is free from karma, if I want, I can live for a whole kalpa, a whole aeons, which is billions of years, right? And it is said that Ananda doesn't hear it at all. Buddha repeats it 3 times, and Ananda actually had to, on behalf of us, people, Ananda had to say, then please live long, live for 1 kalpa. And Buddha would have lived for a whole kalpa, which would mean Buddha would still be alive. But Ananda doesn't say anything at that time, So Kashyapa says, that time you failed the Buddha. And Ananda says, but during that time, I didn't hear anything due to the influence of Mara, I didn't hear anything like this. So there are 8 different ways, 8 different sort of allegations, and he decides, and the Sangha decides, and they kick him out. And it was so tragic for normal ordinary beings that all the people were shocked, and it is said that the gods started weeping and complaining among themselves that now that the Buddha is no longer the sort of the favorite son of the Buddha, is Ananda, is his attendant is treated in like this, So Ananda left, complaining, and but it's a perfect monk, so he listens to what the Sangha says and he goes, and he stays. It is the time of the rain retreat, monsoon retreat time. So he does a retreat in a rich man's house, and this rich man has 4 sons, I believe, and they start receiving teachings from Ananda. Now the Ananda, of course, he has the direct blessing of the Buddha, and he was such a great teacher that these 4 people, students, become arhat. They become liberated, even though Ananda was not liberated. And when they became liberated, they looked at their teacher and they saw that he has, if he would practice, he would become liberated within a week, So they request him, please, will you practice one-pointedly? You will become liberated within a week. And that exactly is what happened. And he became liberated, and he comes back, and Kashyapa welcomes him. So now they have finally 500 arhats, 500 liberated beings. So then they start sort of, I'm supposed to give a break. Just pause the video somewhere, have a tea or something. That's your break. Okay, I just continue. So another, and how they did is also very beautiful. I find is that they prepared the throne for the sort of speaker, whoever is, So the first, they decide to gather all the sutras, teachings of the Buddha, and they Kashyapa says, tells to Ananda, you were always there, and you know everything, you remember everything. Moreover, Buddha gave the sutra teaching responsibility to you, so you must recite all the sutras, And what they did was that 499 arhats, great arhats, they took off their Dharma robe and they put it on the on the Dharma throne. So in a way, like there were 499 Dharma robes of great arhats, great beings, and on top of that, Ananda sat. So it was like sort of immense honor, so to speak, And Ananda looked towards the Mahabodhi, where the place where Buddha became enlightened. This I guess at that time it was not called Bodh Gaya, but it was called Changjub Ningpo. It's called like a Bodhi Hridaya or something, like the a place where Buddha became enlightened. And remembering Shakyamuni Buddha, he uttered this phrase. The first thing he said is, "Thus have I heard at one time." And as soon as he said that, again, all the listeners who were ordinary beings, they started weeping, and because they remember that this is what the Buddha said when he was alive, that when I'm dead, when I'm no more, I want you to collect all my teachings, and in the beginning I want you to say, thus have I heard at one time. And now sort of Buddha's will, in a way, was being carried out. And it was a joyous moment, and it was an extremely sad moment for them. And they start saying like, oh, how impermanent it is now. It is already the time for us to use this phrase, thus have I heard at one time, and like this. So this was also started for the first time with this sutra. This phrase shows 5 things. First is this phrase shows the Dharma, the teaching itself, decay. Thus have I heard, so you heard the teaching. Who heard it? The speaker. Here is the Ananda. Ananda heard it. I heard it. Thus have I heard. So if you have heard it, you must have heard it somewhere. So then it follows, when Buddha was living, when Buddha was dwelling in the deer park of Varanasi, there I heard it. So in the deer park of Varanasi, that's the place. And then there is also a time, like this. I wanted to say this whole story because these days, not just these days, but from many ancient times, people have raised doubts about the legitimacy of Buddhist sutras, and they say things like, Buddhist teachings were gathered long after Buddha died. So it was written down long after Buddha. Even when they were gathering, it was still not written. They were just reciting it, and all of the listeners at that time can remember it, especially these great arhats, So they just put it together. Still, they didn't write it down. They write it down like almost 100 years or 200, 150 years or something after Buddha passed away. Only then they started writing them down, because then there was this need that now there were less and less liberated beings with the ability to remember, and more ordinary beings in the Sangha. So they needed this. So this is our explanation that even though words of the Buddha were written down after almost 100 years after he passed away, but it doesn't mean that in between things were lost, because even though the Buddha was not there, there were many great masters who were like Buddha, especially the 7 the throne holders after the Buddha, Kasyapa, Ananda, like this, and Ananda gives it to another. So there are 7 great throne holders, regents of Buddha, and they were all there. They were there, some of them, and then throughout the time, one of them were always there. So they kept all the teachings, and they were great beings. They were not ordinary beings at all, But of course, it's for a modern being who doesn't consider an enlightened being to be a possibility, then you cannot explain these things to them. But our reason is this. And then, okay. Buddha gives teaching to the 5 monks. Monks as I think about, or as I focus my mind on the things that I have not heard before, which is thinking that, wait, let me look at the translation. This is suffering, a truth of noble beings. So this is suffering, a truth of noble beings. When I contemplate like that, then I mikkesos, meaning I attained. So I attained an eye, seeing. So they translate here as vision. So mik means here means seeing the nature of the Dharma. Basically, it means wisdom here. Yeah. So basically, it means wisdom arose. Yeah, knowledge arose. Apprehension, understanding, and realization arose. I'm reading the translation of the 84,000 by Dharmachakra translation group, team, I believe. So he says, monks, as I focus my mind correctly on the things that I had not hitherto heard, thinking this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, and this is the path leading to the cessation of suffering, vision arose, knowledge, apprehension, understanding, and realization arose. So he's teaching 4 noble truths. The truth of suffering, the truth of cause of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the path to the cessation, these 4. So he recites these 4 noble truths sort of 3 times. So 4 into 3 is 12. So there is this, he calls it this cycle of 12. So he's reciting, he says, I'm reciting this cycle of 12, right? So this 4 noble truth recited 3 times, but in a very different way to symbolize a different state of his realization, of his understanding. So first he says, when I concentrate and think that this is truth of suffering, this is truth of cause of suffering, what is it? This is the cessation of suffering, and this is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. At that time, I gained vision, okay, or then I gained wisdom and realization like this at that time. And then he repeats it one more time, saying, monks, as I focus my mind correctly on the things I had not hitherto heard, thinking with higher knowledge I should relinquish the origin of the suffering, the truth of noble beings. Vision arose, knowledge arose, apprehension, understanding, and realization arose. Monks, as I focused my mind correctly on the things that I had not hitherto heard, thinking with higher knowledge I should actualize the cessation of suffering, the truth of noble beings. Vision arose, knowledge, apprehension, understanding, realization arose. Monks, as I focused my mind correctly on the things that I had not hitherto, I don't know how to pronounce that well, hitherto heard, thinking with higher knowledge I should cultivate the path leading to the cessation of suffering, the truth of noble being. Vision arose, knowledge, apprehension, understanding, realization arose. Monks, as I focus my mind correctly on the things that I had not hitherto heard, thinking with vision, with higher knowledge I have comprehended suffering that All right, until 1.8, paragraph 1.8. So now this from 1.5 till 1.8 is the second sort of now round of him talking about the Four Noble Truths, but this now is a different. This time he says, monks, when I concentrated like this, that with they translated higher knowledge. In Tibetan we have Ngui. Where is the Tibetan now? Ngomparshepes, meaning through clairvoyance or through wisdom, through wisdom, through direct knowledge. Ngomparshepa also can mean direct knowledge, directly seeing, or through, basically through wisdom. One can translate it like that too. And they translate it as higher knowledge. However, so when I meditated, practice like this, that through higher knowledge, I should comprehend, I should understand or comprehend the truth of suffering completely. When I did that, when I concentrate like that, I had vision arose, knowledge arose, apprehension, understanding, realization, like that. And then when I with higher knowledge, or with wisdom, basically with Ngonshe, when I meditated that I should abandon the source of suffering or origin of my suffering, again vision arose, knowledge, apprehension, understanding, and realization. Then like this, with the higher knowledge, I should actualize the cessation of suffering. We will talk about this Four Noble Truths after this. I just want to go through this structure of this sutra a little bit. I should actualize the cessation of the suffering. Cessation of the suffering is suffering no longer, or non-existence of the suffering. The sort of the true nature of the suffering. That's the cessation of the suffering. One can understand it like that. Or when suffering is no more now. You had suffering before, you meditate, you practice the path, now you don't have suffering anymore. That's the cessation of suffering. You can understand like that too. For now. So when I concentrate like that, that I will, actualize, I will achieve the cessation of the suffering. Again, I vision arose, knowledge, apprehension, understanding, realization arose. Then, with the wisdom or higher knowledge, I should cultivate the path leading to the cessation of suffering. When I concentrate, meditate, practice like that, again, vision arose, knowledge, apprehension, understanding, realization arose. Now, this is the second sort of cycle. So, first, he first four, now these four, now once more the Four Noble Truths, they will be repeated. There's also a good reason why too. Monks, as I focus my mind correctly on the things that I had not hitherto heard, thinking with higher knowledge, I have comprehended suffering, that truth of noble beings. Vision arose, knowledge, apprehension, understanding, realization arose. Now, this is after he have after his meditation is done now. seeing, meaning now with the higher knowledge or with wisdom, when he understands the suffering completely, before he wanted to, or he was trying to understand suffering completely. Now he understood the suffering completely. At that time, vision arose, knowledge, apprehension, understanding, realization arose. Similarly, with higher knowledge, I have relinquished the origin of suffering. 1.10. With higher knowledge, I have relinquished the origin of suffering. So with wisdom, he sees that he have now abandoned and destroyed all the cause of the suffering. Again, knowledge, vision arose, apprehension, understanding, realization arose. And 1.11, I apologize for this speed. With higher knowledge, I have cultivated the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Now he has the path. So he sees that I have the path now. I have cultivated, it's done. So again, vision arose, knowledge, apprehension. And 1.13, where is the, so 1.12, so that's it. So from 1.9 until 1.12 is the third sort of mentioning of the Four Noble Truths. So he mentions Four Noble Truths 3 times in this way, and this is the cycle of 12. Now, the reason why he did so, the great, not just great Sakya Pandita, but I'm referring here to the Manjushri Sakya Pandita, what he said. But of course, it is also said by many other masters too, not just him. But he says that the reason why is that here he is showing the whole process of his path. Buddha is showing the whole process of his path in this 12th sort of cycle, where he repeats the Four Noble Truths once, second, and third time. So when he repeats it for the first time, where is it? Where he is concentrating, looking at the Four Noble Truths, trying to see its nature. He says at that time, when he does that, and he says then vision arose. When he says vision arose, that means he have reached the first bhumi, or the path of seeing, so to speak, a path of seeing. And then the second time he says, then with clairvoyance or with higher knowledge, they say, which is wisdom here. Now that he has wisdom, he has wisdom, because before vision arose, right? So this vision is the wisdom of seeing the truth directly. So then with this seeing the truth directly, he again looks at the suffering, and again he looks at the suffering directly, truth of the suffering. Then he tries to abandon the cause of the suffering. Then he looks at the cessation of the suffering, he tries to achieve it. And then he looks at the path and he tries to accumulate the path, practice the path. So this is the second time he mentions the Four Noble Truths. And this is where he traversed the path of contemplation. So after the path of seeing comes the path of contemplation, Gombram. Then the last time, last time he mentions it, he has already passed through the path now. He has finished his path. He is an arahat, so to speak. Here he is the Buddha now. So then now what happens? The last cycle, for example, starting from 1.9 till paragraph number 1.9 till 1.13. If you're looking into the 84,000 translation, but of course there are so many other translations too. So then if so, then I apologize for the confusion. But here, when he mentions the Four Noble Truths third time, he says, I have comprehended suffering now. I have abandoned the cause of suffering, I have accumulated, I have finished the path, and I have achieved the cessation. So it's done now, the deal is done, his path is done. So he had reached the sort of non-learner state. So here we have 3 states. The sort of the stream enterer, or the path of seeing, so to speak, and then the learner, path of sort of the stage of learner, and then non-learner. He no longer practices. He's the Buddha now. He's liberated. It's becoming longer than I expected. When the Buddha gave this teaching, actually I wanted to go into the details of the Four Noble Truths, but the time is now it's already more than an hour, and also today so many great masters are teaching, and I feel a little bit humbled, and I feel like what is the use of talking at all and waste people's time, So I hope you're watching this after some days, and you were busy watching the teachings of, I think Dongsa Khyentse Rinpoche is going to release a video today, and also I think other masters I have seen that they are also going to teach today, since it's such a holy day, such an auspicious day for us. And so then I don't feel like taking so much of your time if you're watching it today, on the 5th. So in short, the truth of suffering, for those, there may be some who is listening to Buddhist teaching for the first time. So the truth of suffering refers to basically our existence, this existence of flesh and bone, that no matter what you do, something is always wrong in this world. No matter what you do, there's always, if you are aware, you realize that there's always this uncertainty about yourself, your mind, your life, your friendship, your relationship, your money. No matter what you do, if you just open your eyes, you see beings suffer, going through profound conditions, sufferings that we can only imagine, So that's truth of suffering. Simple as that. And to see that, all you have to do is open your eyes and just be honest. So it's like that. And of course, since this is a religion, a spiritual path that really deals with the mind and transformation of the mind, so then the truth of suffering of the mind is all the hopes and fear of the mind, hope and hoping to get something and hoping to avoid something. We have that all the time. From there, then we get something we don't want to have, and we lose something that we don't want to lose. So like this. And especially the truth of suffering here is an untamed mind. An untamed mind is truth of suffering. Completely mundane mind, always running after something, some gain, some pleasure. If you honestly look into our mind, even when we practice spiritual practice and make offering to the Buddha, meditate and so on and so forth, there is a lot of worldly aim, buried deep inside, in our mind, and it's so difficult to avoid it, I know this very well. So that's truth of suffering, the real truth of suffering. Truth of suffering is emptiness, not knowing emptiness, the ignorance. Truth of suffering is truth of suffering is impermanence. Truth of suffering is not being able to let go of grasping. So many. So this is the suffering, and then, of course, nothing comes without any causes and conditions. So this suffering happens because we have an untamed mind again, and this suffering happens because we have anger, desire, and ignorance. And from anger, desire, and ignorance comes jealousy, miserliness, competitive mentality, or sort of discontentment, discomfort, like this, then through this type of negative mentality, negative emotions, let's call them, we do things, and what we do is called karma, or doing those things is called karma, and this karma brings result. Of course, when you do something, there is a result. Energy is never lost. So when you do something, there is a result, and that result is called truth of suffering. So you see, the origin of suffering is the harmful emotions and the action out of harmful emotion, and it may be good and bad too. In order to become, I don't know, get more money, you could give other people money. So which is actually good. It could be a positive action. In order to some do good things because it makes them feel good, which is good, but it's still an action coming from these type of negative emotions, and desire, like this. So good or bad, whatever you do through ignorance, anger, and desire is a cause, an origin of future samsaric rebirth. And so there you have the cause and effect of samsara and its cause, or let's say the cause and effect of samsara. And then the next two, the cessation and the path, this is the cause and effect of liberation. So knowing that you cannot abandon samsara by making samsara, by punishing samsara, you can only abandon samsara by cutting the cause of samsara. When Siddhartha was sitting without eating, without drinking, he was punishing the samsara. He was trying to get rid of samsara by beating it, by trying to destroy the truth of suffering. But that cannot happen if you do not destroy the cause of it, which was these afflictions in his mind, which is the afflictions in my mind, our mind. So and this is also the wonderful kindness of the Buddha, that he, there are so many teachers in the spiritual path where they do realize that anger is bad. They do realize that attachment and grasping and miserliness and jealousy and these things are bad, but there's no real path how to get rid of them. Even though when some of them try to give a path, it's only just to suppress them. And this holds true even to this day. Of course, we are not saying that this is the best path, but if you look around, honestly, you will never find a path like this. And so this is really, and it's Buddha's kindness, immense kindness, and his wisdom. So that is there. The third one is the path. Path is the sort of the antidote to the origin of the suffering. Path is the antidote to the harmful emotions, and path is the antidote to the karma, to samsaric karma. In short, one can understand the path as the discipline. First, you need discipline. You need to take vow. You need to make a decision that I will follow the Buddha. That is your discipline, and then of course you can be a monk or a nun, or you can be an upasaka. You can try to maintain the Eightfold Noble Path, so to speak, like this. So these are discipline. Then comes meditation. Discipline alone is not enough, but when you have discipline, you have less distraction. Your mind is stronger, and you need to meditate. And then we have meditation. That is also path. And then from meditation comes wisdom. You experience phenomena very differently now, more profoundly, and more sort of you experience its nature basically. So that's the wisdom. So these three is the path. One can understand like that. Of course, I'm not saying one can understand like that as if this is my idea. It is taught by the Buddha like this. Very shortly, discipline, meditation, and wisdom. So these three is the path. Then when you have these three, and when you finish practicing, so to speak, these three, then you do not have truth of suffering anymore. You do not have suffering anymore. You do not have the cause of suffering anymore. Think about it. Cause of suffering anymore, meaning you do not have any anger. You do not have any attachment. You do not have any ignorance. You do not have any, all the things that torment us, you do not have anymore. So not having that is the cessation. Of course, explaining cessation can be explained as the ultimate truth and so on, but just as an introduction to this sutra, sort of the your suffering will cease, karma, samsaric karma will cease, afflictions, harmful emotions will cease, and that ceasing is called cessation, the truth of cessation. So there you have, in the Four Noble Truth, you have the cause and effect of samsara and the complete sort of cause and effect cycle of nirvana. These Four Noble Truths can be taught in the 16 Noble Truths, where we in detail talk about each Noble Truth in 4 points. From here comes this. You can understand why Theravada masters will say, Mahayana teaching is not real. Why? First of all, they give whatever reason that they give, and then the main reason is this. They say, to gain liberation, you don't need this, whether you talk this bodhicitta and all this kind of different bodhisattva path. You don't need all this. Look at the Buddha. What did the Buddha say in this, for example, sutra like this? Buddha said, I practice Four Noble Truth. So first I practice Four Noble Truth. I just look at this reality. Then I really went into the practice. I tried to abandon the suffering, the cause of the suffering and so on. I tried to achieve the path. And then I achieved the path. I finished the path. I achieved the cessation. I abandoned the cause of the suffering like this. Look, this is what the Buddha said. He's saying that he only practiced the Four Noble Truth. What is all this bodhisattva paramita thing you're talking about? And we have to accept that. There's no doubt. Buddha says it here, right here. We have to accept that. But we say that, with all due respect, Four Noble Truth is vast, and all the path of the Bodhisattva, and if you want to talk about Vajrayana, all that includes into this Four Noble Truth. We are not saying that all these teachings are something other than the Four Noble Truth, So this is important. If you want to sort of protect Mahayana teaching, you have to know how to, you have to speak the truth. Anyway, so when the Buddha gave this teaching, where is it? Buddha asks Kaundinya. I said while the Buddha was teaching, he became Arhat. That not really mentioned here, by the way. Maybe that's not really true. But while he was teaching, he sort of we say he saw the truth. When the Blessed One had given this Dharma discourse, Venerable Kaundinya, along with 80,000 gods, achieved the Dharma vision that is free from dust and stainless with regard to phenomena. So this is like seeing the truth directly. So he's not ordinary being anymore. He's a noble being now. It's like he has the path of seeing. Okay, so that, and Buddha knows that. And then Buddha's. So now he's a Sangha. Now he's a really noble Sangha. He's on the first bhumi, right? So Buddha asked Kaundinya, "Did you understand the Dharma?" They translate. Kaundinya, "Did you understand the Dharma?" Blessed One, he replied, "I understood." Kaundinya, "Did you understand? Did you understand?" Blissful One, he replied, I understood, I understood." Okay, now there is a difference here. In the Tibetan, we have where the Buddha says, "Kaundinya, did you understand all the Dharma? Did you understand it completely, whatever I'm teaching, all of it? Did you understand all of the Dharma?" He says, "Yes, I understood all of the Dharma that you taught today. I understood all of it." And he asks again, "Kaundinya, did you understand all of it? Did you understand all of it?" He asks twice, 2 more times. And he says, "Yes, I understood all of it. I understood all of it." And this is the reason why he was known as Ajnanata Kaundinya. Ajnanata meaning one who doesn't have ignorance, or one who knows everything. Actually, I don't know why they cut out "Did you understand all of the Dharma?" They just have "Did you understand Dharma?" Unless they saw it somewhere written. It's anyway, so like this. So then this is the sutra of the four wheel of Dharma. And what else do I want to say? I'm during the live session, we are going to read this sutra together. In a way, it's like a sutra resounding. And since this is the activity of my guru, 84,000 project, I would request you would be best if you will use the translation of the 84,000. But of course, other translators also put a lot of effort, so whatever translation you use is also okay. And I hope that for those who are going into an actual sutra, actual teaching that came from the Buddha, not just some teaching some Tibetan or some Zen master wrote, but an actual sort of words in a way that's coming from the Buddha, that those who are reading it for the first time, or and if you feel that it is really beneficial, and if you feel that that it takes you closer to the root of the Dharma, to this great being, then please continue to do so. We have so many sutras these days translated. I think many Pali sutras are translated, and you can read that. And there are many Chinese sutras, sutras in Chinese translated too, which you can read. Many of them are free, and 84,002 they have a lot of translations, sutra translated, and do not doubt these sutras. If someone tells you, oh wow, these sutras were written down after almost 100 years after the Buddha, so you don't know how many alterations may have been done, because these sutras were kept by great beings like Ananda and Kasyapa. All the Abhidharma teachings were collected by Kasyapa. He recited all of it, like this. So there's no doubt. These were not ordinary beings. So thank you so much. Even though it doesn't help anybody, but trying to talk to you, it helps me. I get to read these sutras, and I get to read different sources like this. This is the teaching of Sakya Pandita, great Tibetan masters, and he wrote this beautiful text called Chunjung, the history of Dharma. Hopefully we can get it translated one day, because it's very wonderful and it's very short. We have many history of Dharma, but sometimes it can be like a whole sort of thick book or two thick books, but this is very short. Modern people like short text. So that's that. Thank you so much, and we will practice together afterwards. Please try to be online if you can, 6 p.m. German time, on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much.